Welcome everybody to this episode of the Confidence Conversations podcast. It's my second day back from holiday, so who knows where this will go, but I'm really delighted to welcome to the podcast today, Nikie Forster. Hi, Nikie.
Hi, Gail. Thank you for having me back, especially straight on after your holiday.
I know, it's funny, isn't it? I think it'll be fine. I think this is probably what I need just to get going again, like, you know, the swift kick that pushes you back. So, Nikie, we are going to be talking today. I'll get you to introduce yourself in a second, but we're going to be talking about the comfort zone today because there's a conversation that we had over coffee that I was like, oh, we should just be recording this. You should come on the podcast. So before we do that, tell everybody, like true blind date style, who you are and what you do, where you're from.
It is like blind date.
Yeah.
So my name is Nikie Forster. My company is Curious Lighthouse Learning Consultancy. And the clue is in the title there. It's about learning and development. And I quite often say to people, I help develop the people who develop the people. So I work with predominantly managers. I love working with really new managers into roles of accidental managers, but I also work with trainers as well and just help them with creative ideas and things like that. So if it's anything to do with people and it's anything to do with learning, I'm basically involved in it.
I love it. And I love that tagline of I develop your people who develop your people. I love that. I mean, it does what it says on the tin, right?
Yeah.
And I'm also really interested in the accidental manager because I think you and I have talked about this before, but I think we see a lot of people that get promoted probably because they're really good at their job. So we go, oh, they're amazing. They're so talented. And then they get promoted to a manager and actually they're not as successful in that role. Absolutely. For whatever reason. Some of that is probably because they've not had the training, right? Or the development to do that.
And nearly everybody that I've spoken to, when I get to them in terms of managing, when I get to them in terms of them as managers, and you say, well, what training have you had? If they are in a leadership role, then they may well have had something previously. But for the group that I tend to deal with, is exactly what you said. They are new to role, or they've done something that, you know, they've excelled in what they did previously, and then they're managing, and it's usually expanding companies as well. So, you know, more people coming in and say, well, you're good at what you do, we'll expand, you know, you can be a manager and you can have all these people. And it's not the same at all. People are tricky. People are, there's nothing about one person that you can kind of tick every box and say, well, that's going to be the same for this other person over here. So I think there's a lot in what I do is about just thinking on your feet and thinking about everybody as individuals.
Yeah.
You know, and it's having the confidence, pardon the pun, in order to actually do that and say, you know, people aren't a tick box. You can't say that's what they're like and be done with it.
Yeah, and I think some of it comes with experience, doesn't it, as well? But I think some of it comes from you understanding yourself as a manager as well, and that actually your style of management or leadership won't fit every person. So what you like isn't going to be right for all of those individuals either.
Absolutely, and I think that's one of the things that I generally start off talking about. Actually, is understanding yourself in order to understand others. Because when you understand where you're coming from and what triggers you and what inspires you, and you understand that that's not different from, you know, somebody else. And the other thing that I quite often say is people are mind readers. You know, what you're thinking is not out there for other people to know and understand. You have to actually say something. And so many times I have conversations where a new manager will say, what should I do with this person who's like this? Well, okay, well, when you had a conversation with them, what did they say? And, well, I haven't spoken to them. Well, there you go then. That's what you should do. Go and talk to them.
Yeah, therein lies the problem. And I think as well, right, just slightly off topic, but I think the art of conversation has gone a little bit, hasn't it, as well? Because we do so much texting, don't we? And so much that actually when it comes to speaking to people, I mean, I'm sure I'm not alone when I say if my phone rings, I sit and stare at it. I mean, and God forbid if the home phone rings. I mean, what is that all about? It's like, who's that?
We got rid of our home phone years ago now, because every time it rang, we didn't pick it up.
No.
So it's like, what's the point?
Yeah, we actually don't. As it's on silent, we still have it, but it's on silent, so we don't hear it. But I mean, I just think that the art of conversation, which is what we need as a manager and a leader, right, is to have those conversations with our people. I was working with a business last year, and I did some like get to know yous, and one of the get to know yous I did was with the CEO. And I said to her, whilst I'm doing this training with your people, if there was one thing I could give your new managers, what would that be? And she said to me, and I remember this I think I'll remember this quote forever. She said to me that they have to understand that the strength of their leadership lives and breathes on the strength of their relationship with their people.
Nice. Yes.
And I was like, just, when you take a step back, so, you can think you're the best leader in the world, but actually if you don't have those relationships with those people that are in your team, then you're not going to be any kind of leader or manager, are you?
It's so true. I get quite a lot of requests for doing leadership training, and when you drill down to it, what it actually is, it splits into two things, I think. One is it's that just the fundamentals of actually doing the manager role, and then it's the people stuff, and it's doing the people stuff right, and it's not about being inspirational and being able to do a fantastic presentation and rallying the troops. There might be a small element of that, but really good leadership is about people.
Yeah, totally. And actually,
we went off on a rant then.
We did. I know, but I love it. We will talk about the comfort zone shortly, but I love it because also, well, and actually, there's a tenuous link here, isn't there, to comfort zone and management and leadership. But I also think that, and I've completely lost my train of thought, but I was going along the lines of the conversation piece.
Yes,
it can be really, really tricky with people, but you can still be, that's where I was going, you can still be inspirational through the conversation. So when we think about inspiration, I think actually you might have even waved your, big and inspirational, but actually sometimes we can be inspirational by just doing our thing, but doing it really, really bloody well and being really good at what we do. We don't have to be this inspirational TED Talk speaker or whatever. We can still be inspirational by doing our thing, but doing a really, really good job.
Yes, so, yeah, completely agree with that.
My tenuous link then to the comfort zone is there's actually a link there, isn't there, to management and managing people.
Oh, there is.
And I've worked with clients as well where, they've come and they've gone, right, suddenly I'm now managing a team of, one of my clients at the moment has gone from no management to a management of 13 people. I mean, that's massive, and managing people is so emotive. And actually in her case, this is massively pushing her out of her comfort zone, because it's something she hasn't done before. And also then you've got all the intricacies of the relationships there, where she's got people that are the same level as her, she's their peers, and suddenly she's managing them. There's all of that thing. She's got some true kind of experts in the team where she doesn't have a clue what they do. So now she's suddenly managing somebody that she doesn't know what they're doing. But if you were to define the comfort zone and what it means to you, if we use that as our starting point, what would that be?
So the comfort zone for me it's a really interesting question, because obviously everybody's comfort zone is going to look, feel, and it's very different to each other. My comfort zone is a place where I feel in control and quite free. And I know those two words kind of don't really go together, but they make sense to me. So I'm in control of the situation, but I'm free to do whatever I want within that zone, knowing that it's not going to cause me stress beyond belief. So yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make a lot of sense. And I like those two words, kind of the control and the free, because I think that the comfort zone for me is probably something similar actually, in the sense of it's I'm in control of what's happening. And I like your idea of things being free, because let's if we take a situation, right, let's say you've been asked to do some training, right, for a group. You're in control because you know what you're doing, but you want the freedom to be able to do your own thing. And that's kind of how I've interpreted kind of what you've said. I think also for me, the comfort zone is something where I feel like I'm a bit stagnant as well, though, where I'm maybe not growing, where things have almost paused a little bit.
Yeah, and I think it does have that kind of double edge to it. I think you've got the comfort zone seen in the positive light is I feel very comfortable in this situation, and therefore my confidence is high, and I feel as though I can explore a bit and all those kind of things. And then there's the comfort zone as in stepping out of the comfort zone, which it feels much more pressurized. And I think you can still step out of your comfort zone in that positive side.
Yeah.
But I feel that's very different to stepping outside of your comfort zone when maybe other people are asking you to do that. And I think that's probably where it comes from. If I choose to step outside the comfort zone, that feels like it's on that positive side. Whereas if somebody else is controlling, back to that control, if somebody else is controlling that or asking me to step out of my comfort zone, that doesn't feel as positive to me.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I'm just reflecting back on a conversation I had with somebody who offered me some work. And it was development training, learning and development work. And I reflected on it and thought, do you know what? Actually, it's a step too far. Now, whilst as everybody knows that listens to this, and you know, Nick, as well, I'm all for pulling up my big pants, going off and stepping out of my comfort zone. But you're absolutely right. There comes a point where it sometimes feels like a step too far. And then you're losing that control. And for me, what I felt I was losing there was probably a little bit of credibility.
Yeah.
Because it then didn't feel quite... not that I wasn't capable, but it didn't sit right with me. Okay, so there was something that just didn't sit right. So then my values came into question, you know, in terms of my integrity. So I said no, and actually for me, the courageous bit there was saying no to that piece of work, rather than just saying yes and then setting myself up to fail.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I've recognised, the more the more experienced I get, as opposed to the older I get, and the more experienced I get, is I recognise where my talents are. I know what I'm good at. I know what I'm not good at. But I also know what I don't enjoy. And I think there's an element of confidence and comfort zone that come into that. So being in your comfort zone always, for me, sounds, somebody's in their comfort zone, it always feels like a negative comment.
Yeah.
But I don't think it is. I think if you know and you are conscious about where the edges of your comfort zone are, and you're able to make an informed decision as to whether you're stepping out of it or staying into it, then that's a very positive thing, because it means you're understanding yourself more.
Oh, Nikie, I love that. I really love that. And it's so true, isn't it? Because I think maybe our comfort zone isn't a round thing. Maybe it's a little bit of a flexible kind of space. Because I sometimes think as well, you know, you might go off and do something that feels like it's out of your comfort zone, but the place you come back to, there's a plane going overhead. I hope nobody can hear that. The place you go back to, for me, is the comfort zone to then process that and reflect on that and take the learnings. So it feels like it can be this quite sort of transient shape almost.
Yes. And I also think, depending on your relationship with risk or with comfort, very much depends on how you approach it. So I've never read the book, but I know there's a book out there called something like Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway.
Yeah, I've read it. It's brilliant. It's a great book. Yeah.
Okay, I love that you've read it. I would not pick it up off the bookshelf.
So when I say I've read it, I've dipped in and out of it. I haven't read it cover to cover. Yes.
But the actual title, for me, Feel the Fear and Do It. I don't want to feel the fear. I don't want to put myself in that situation.
Yeah.
However, what I do, i.e. standing up in front of people and training, you know, and it can be quite a large group of people, and then not necessarily, you know, all the technology goes off, for example, and it's just me standing there. For some people, that would be the worst thing in the world, but that doesn't put me out of my comfort zone. I'm quite happy with that. So I think that whole, again, just coming back to knowing yourself and what makes you tick, and being able to say no to other people, I think is important as well, even if they think it's the right thing for you to do. Sometimes this comes back to my stubbornness, I think, more than anything else.
The control element, isn't it, as well, though?
It does keep coming back to control.
Yeah. The other interesting bit for me, which was actually the catalyst for me saying to you, come on the podcast and let's talk about it, was the experience side of things, because we had a conversation, didn't we, over coffee, that said, do you know what, you and I have got quite similar backgrounds, and in the olden days when it was training we worked in, we would go off and do training up and down the country. We didn't have sat nav, we often didn't know where we were going. We'd get to a venue, there'd be nothing there. And now we were saying, weren't we? Oh my God! Now we plan it. We're even on Google Maps to see what the walk is from maybe where we're staying to where we're planning this to the nth degree. And we had this question, didn't we? That said, is that an age thing, right? Age and maybe experience, or what? What is that? Is that our comfort zone's expanded? Is it that actually we know what? Because you've already referenced, you know what you like, and you know what you. Where you're good at and where you excel, does that play a part of it, or actually is it that we're more aware of risk, so we don't want to be late? I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I do find that fascinating. So yeah, reverse 20 odd years ago, when I was in a role exactly like you just said, I was quite newish to doing the whole official trainer thing, and I was literally one end of the country to the other, and when I got to the other end, then I would read what on earth I was meant to be training the following day, and then I would turn up and, you know, have I got all the people and where am I at and does anything work and all that things. And I think I was quite free and easy with that because I was quite new to it and maybe didn't know what I know now, and I was learning, and it was all part of the learning experience. I'm talking slowly because I'm thinking.
No, that's fine. Yeah, no, it makes sense though.
So it's all part of that learning experience of, but feeling as though, well, whatever happens, I'm just going to be able to deal with it. Whereas now I think, having done all that, I know the bits that I like out of that, which is the turning up feeling as though I've got everything ready, but knowing that I can step into the, well, if I had it just a couple of weeks ago, you know, the technology didn't work. I had some PowerPoint slides. Well, okay, well, let's just knock those on the head. The room was crammed full. There was nowhere to break out or do anything. So I've got all that in my toolkit to be able to not to worry about. And still know at the end of the day it was a professional session that people got some stuff from. Now, is that because my levels of what I deliver are now higher?
Yeah.
Rather than when I first started, it was like, well, just crack on and do it. I don't know.
I'd love to know if anybody's listening's got any thoughts on this, because I'm still in that. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's as I've got older, am I less averse to risk? Is it that actually we've got more information at our fingertips, right? So we can look at where we go and we can program our phones before we leave in the car, you know, all of that kind of thing. We can, and if we are the kind of people that like to plan, we can plan. I remember years ago going to, as a manager, the company that I worked for at the time were doing like a senior manager program, and I applied for it. And I remember we had to do, it was like an assessment centre, so we had to do like a presentation and a few other bits and pieces. And I remember preparing for that. And I think I remember saying to Paul, right, I just want to go prepared, because if any of the tech goes wrong, I mean, this was in the early days where you took something on a USB, you know, and you know, it was a bit touch and go whether it would work. So I'd at the time think I'd got it on a USB. I'd got printouts of my PowerPoint slides. I think I'd even got it on a CD, kids, right? It was on an actual CD. And when I got into the room, none of it worked. None of it worked. And I, to this day, think that was a test to see that actually it was working, but they were told me none of it was working, to see how
devious.
I coped with that under
Yeah.
that pressure, because I'd gone all prepared. And actually, some of that hasn't changed. So I did a talk the other week at the expo over at Fontwell, and I think I'd got like 5 versions of my presentation, like a printed version. It was on my desktop. I'd got a cloud version. I'd got different in case my fonts didn't work and all of that. And some of that hasn't changed. But in terms of the getting there, I mean, I'd just jump in my car and go anywhere. And now I like to plan it.
Yeah, I mean, like you say, there's a little bit of an age difference between us, I think, because when I first started out, it was OHPs.
Oh yeah, yeah,
yeah. And it was like, and then there was a whole thing of when do you switch it on and put your lights on and all this kind of thing. But there was a lot less technology around for the work that I did 20 years ago, and it has become more convoluted. But I don't mind that. I don't mind technology at all. But I do think potentially the older I get, the more, I don't know if it's risk averse or I just can't be asked.
Yeah. Can't be asked for the drama.
Personal life.
Yeah.
There are certain things you just think, no, I can't be bothered with that, so I'm not going to do it. And the confidence to say that is okay, because as long as the end result, if we're talking work, as long as the end result is still what it needs to be, yeah.
So Nikie, what do you do now that pushes you out of your comfort zone? On kind of the fear side.
Yeah, see again, I don't do fear.
Yeah.
No. But again, my version of what is fear and what isn't is another thing. So things like when I first started up my business, I didn't know how to create a website. So I learned anything to do with learning, I don't see as a risk. So, for example, I've just created a whole bunch of products related to learning and development. And how do you make a digital download so that you can link it to the checkouts and all the kind of stuff? So it's an online courses, and some people might think, oh, okay, well, that's a bit scary, being in front of a camera and talking and things. But again, if it's to do with learning, so that this might come back to values, like you say before. If your values are linked to what you're doing, I think my risk vision is a bit more blurred, because I don't see the risk in it, because it's all to do with my values. But if it was like, if you said to me, I'm trying to think of something like go on Britain's Got Talent and sing, it's like, no. Thank you.
Oh my God, no, thank you. Because people always used to say to me, oh, I bet you don't get nervous when you public speak. And I'm like, yeah, I do. I get nervous before anything I do. And I think if I didn't, there'd be something wrong with me. But some of those things, I don't feel like they're pushing myself out of my comfort zone. I think the things that I do that do make me, I like your idea, if we go back a little bit in the conversation to your idea of the positive side of the comfort zone and the negative side. I think I probably do quite a lot on the positive side. So networking, pitching, all of that kind of thing. I will push myself to do those kind of things. But I maybe there's a little bit of reframing of the comfort zone here that we need to do with ourselves as well. You understanding what does that mean for you, and what do you do positively. And it's also understanding, like you've said, what is your definition of fear, real true fear? What is your definition of I don't know, what's in your comfort zone, in your control, and what does that feel like and sound like and look like for you? So everything's personal.
I'm getting a visual image as you're talking of like a desert island that represents your comfort zone. And you place all your different things on the desert island that helps you, but what's around the edges? What are those sharks? What do they represent? And the tidal wave over here, I don't know, it's getting quite dramatic, but do you know what I mean? I need an image,
a visual, so like your island feels nice and safe, it's nice and warm, You can teeter on the edge where the sharks might be, and where the can't you in like in the water. So you might be paddling, but actually swimming is like the real fear, because you don't know you actually don't know what's in the water, but you're probably happy to go sort of waist high to see it.
And what do you build your raft out of to get you out to sea? Oh, this is a whole analogy we could explore.
Or do you even want to go out to sea? Because maybe some people don't, right? Because we do say nothing ever grows in your comfort zone, but I question whether that's actually true or not, because it depends what your comfort zone looks and feels like for you. And I still think there is an element of we push ourselves out of our comfort zone. I mean, recording stuff like this, right? I've already said to you, I've recorded a load of stuff in here. I've no idea how to use any of it. So that feels a little bit like it's out of my comfort zone in that sense. But to your point, it's about learning, isn't it?
Yes.
Where do you see people in or out of their comfort zone in workshops, in training with people?
So I think it's really interesting because there was such a, regardless of job title, people approach learning and workshops from their own perspective, i.e., if they're a very reflective person, they'll want to sit quietly and reflect. If they're a very extrovert person, they'll be wanting to talk. So if I suddenly say to them, right, we're going to do an activity, and it involves going to talk to somebody about something, some people are up on their feet already moving across and right, okay, let's go together and we'll do this. And meanwhile, other people are sat in their seat going, don't want to do this. I'd much rather just watch a PowerPoint slide and write my notes. And so, but the thing with workshops is it's about having the blend of everything. And I do often say to people, that throughout, and I tend to do programs rather than one-off workshops, but I do tend to say to them, there's going to be something in here that you'll really enjoy, and there's going to be other stuff in here that might not be quite for you. But I encourage you to take part in all of it in the way that makes you feel the most comfortable. And I think allowing people to be adults and saying no, and I encourage that in my workshops, because I don't want them to feel pressurized, otherwise they're not going to learn.
Yeah, totally.
I want them to feel comfortable enough to explore and be open to things. And if they're thinking about, right, well, I'm going to be asked to stand up in a minute and do a presentation, I'm not listening to anything that anybody else is saying right now. So I try and have a blend of things that allow people that want to do the extroverted, hands-on, talking out loud stuff to do that. But at the same time, I also want those who would prefer a bit of quiet reflection to go, just shut up and let me think while I write my notes down very neatly in my book. I want to allow that as well.
It's so true, isn't it, about the piece, the way you don't listen. So I think about networking a lot as well. And I don't love 60-second pitches. I mean, I do it, but I don't love them. But people always comment on them. People go, oh, I hate them. And what happens is that if you're in the middle of that group, you don't hear anything that's before you because you're waiting for your turn and you're thinking, what the hell am I going to say? What it's like, and then you don't hear anything after you because you're so relieved that you've done it and it's out the way. You just don't get to hear them. And it's the same.
I call that creeping death.
Yes, so that's what I used to call it as well. Yeah, creeping death. Yeah. That's exactly what some 60-second pictures are like, isn't it? So, Nikie, I mean, I think we could literally keep talking about the comfort zone, but I think my conclusion from our conversation is that and we said this right at the beginning in relation to management about you understanding yourself. This is about you understanding what your comfort zone looks like for you. And I would think if you've not thought about it in this way before, think about what does the positive side of the comfort zone look like when you step outside of it. Maybe there needs to be, I don't know if anybody's seen, you will have seen it, Nikie, I'm sure the one that's this comfort zone and then fear zone, learning zone, growth zone, the diagram. But I wonder, right, if you're a visual person, go and find yourself a desert island, draw the sharks in the sea and figure out where your comfort zone sits and what that looks like and what that feels like and what is the real fear, but actually what is this still feels like I'm learning. And you use the phrase with your attendees, your delegates on your workshops of, I want people to feel comfortable enough to explore. And I really like that. Go off and explore. You know, like we might go to a new country, go off and explore, learn a little bit about the culture, and then come back and sit on that desert island beach and go, right, what did I learn about that new place I've just been to?
Yeah,
Mm.
absolutely. Because out there with the sharks are also the dolphins.
Oh, yeah.
So, you know, it's never going in the water means you're never going to get to swim with the dolphins. But if you do go in the water, are you going to get bitten by the shark? So it's about how do you make it right for you?
Yeah, God, I'd never thought about it like that. I love that. Yeah, you don't go in the water, you're not going to see them, are you?
Yeah.
Wow. Oh, Nikie, thank you. My final question for you is, what do you think is the
Yes.
biggest barrier that stops people from stepping out of their comfort zone?
I think the biggest barrier is the unknown.
Mm.
It's the not knowing, and being able to know what that looks like, feels like, sounds like, and know whether that's from somebody else's experience or whether it's by doing what you need to do in order to feel reassured enough that you can step back onto the desert island at any point. I think
Yeah.
it's about knowing more and being free to make that choice for yourself.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
You're
Where
very
can
welcome.
I mean, I think literally, and I say this to all of my guests, but it's such a fascinating topic, the comfort zone, isn't it? Because, like you said right at the beginning, actually, it's often seen as quite a negative thing, but it can also be a positive thing, without a
Yeah,
doubt.
sure.
Nikie, where can people find you if they're interested to learn more about you and Curious Lighthouse?
Wonderful. So the two best places, LinkedIn is a great place. Either Nikie Forster or Curious Lighthouse. Can't remember which one it is, but one of those will get you to find me. And also my website, which is curiouslighthouse.co.uk.
Amazing. Nikie, thank you. It's been great talking to you. And thanks everybody for listening to this episode of the Confidence Conversations podcast.